cat and the dog. Pro-cat, first speaker, may begin, but please introduce your team.
We are the cat, and I'm Beth on the first speaker, Rose second speaker, and Catherine is the second speaker. Just to start off, there are many reasons why we think the government needs to be more involved in our society. To start off, we're going to talk about three market areas. First of all, public goods. Different goods like street lights and road and postal service. It would take care of the upkeep of streets and street lights and roads if the government didn't do it. Private companies not going to be able to charge for the roads unless they're told would be a great cost to the Same with postal service. It would be easy for a private company to take over the postal service, but again, much greater cost because they're just focusing on maximizing profit, whereas government is focusing on the well-being of society and ensuring that the lowest cost of another market failure is externality. Education. Government spends a lot of money on financial aid and scholarships because it's benefiting society and increasing technology, standard of living, etc. A private company is not going to give a scholarship to students because in the future it might focus on new technology or better for consumers. Another externality is pollution. The government doesn't regulate businesses or factories and how much pollution they emit, and what instead of do that we have the air. Yes, two companies can negotiate with each other and come up with an agreement, but that's not going to work every time. What about a factory that is harming a large city? A large city is not going to be able to for this factory. They don't have the organization to do that. Another market failure is duplicated information. Consumers need government-run organizations like the FDA and the EPA to expose different issues that need to tackle issues consumers policy and besides these three market failures, the main issue with the private businesses is that they're so focused on maximizing profit, that's their number one goal. Whereas the government, that's not going to be their number one thing that they're doing. They're trying to do a lot of things that will lower the cost for consumers. This is why we think the government needs to take turning healthcare for four big reasons. People who are poor, they can't, if their employer doesn't offer them healthcare, then they're not going to be able to get it for an affordable price. Also, people with citizenship, they need healthcare more than somebody who's completely healthy. That is really difficult for them to get healthcare. The government will be able to help them out with it much more than a private company would be able to do that. Also, economies of scale, because if it's equal to big organization, it will lower the cost for everything. Doctors are here, they're not going to be worried about whether this person is going to live or live down to themselves. And this again is really important. Government is not focused on profit, whereas the private health insurance companies, they're focused on maximizing profit for their prices and growth rates on the healthcare.
Okay, now time for the first speaker from the
Hi, my name is Esther Ugly. Recently, a first year second year entered as well as the art and so the question at hand is whether or not we should have government, but how much government we should have. Some government is investment. We need them to establish and support copyright, provide public goods that national sector building dams, and we need to function as regulatory agency when it comes to pollution. But in many other instances, government is too big, especially when it interferes with the market. We know that in a capitalist economy, a competitive market, price of goods sold adjusts to balance supply and demand. At equilibrium price, the quantity of goods demanded by buyers is equal to the quantity supplied by sellers. When government interferes with this free market system, it causes inefficiencies and creates market power. Some examples of these inefficiencies caused by government is the institution of price ceilings and price floors. In the 1970s, the government imposed a price ceiling or cap on gas prices. Gas industry. Meaning that fuel could not be sold by companies at higher prices than what the government had already set. In a competitive market, that means that the demand for goods is much higher than what the supply will supply it for. That led to long lines and shortages. Another example of price stealing is actually due to unintended consequences. In order to provide affordable housing for returning veterans and poor, New York established rent control. This ended up causing massive shortages in housing and about over 300,000 abandoned houses. People were living in poorly maintained units because landlords didn't have the incentive to keep them in good shape, and prospective renters couldn't find housing. The government interference in this case actually ended up hurting people as it helped. Another example of misguided intervention is when the government established the price floor regarding minimum wage. Price floors increase the demand for work. People can't find jobs because employers are no longer willing to pay the higher wage. You end up with a surplus of workers and increased unemployment, again hurting the change people are trying to help. Sometimes we depend on government to create and enforce laws that can make ethical and fair decisions. But when we talk about the market system, government intervention in the name of morality actually causes more harm than good. A good example of this is price gouging. By making price gouging illegal, sellers lose the incentive to supply goods because they can't make a higher profit. At the same time, people start hoarding supplies that people who actually need those things can't get them. Such laws based on emotion and not logic prevent the market from functioning normally. Lastly, one of the grossest inefficiencies caused by the government intervention involves politics. Lobbying groups provide incentives to government officials to make decisions that are based on personal gain and not social well-being. The best example of this is private reports in the agricultural industry. Basically, the government provides various farmers subsidies and guarantees that they will be paid a price much higher than equilibrium for their crops. One of the biggest farm subsidies is corn, given the genetically modified corn causes adverse health effects. The government makes up the difference between the price that consumers are actually paying and what the farmers receive, and so the farmers' pockets change. The costs of these subsidies are paid by citizens. Taxpayers, consumers, and people in impoverished nations who can't sell their agricultural goods in a competitive market are all hurt by price supports. The government interferes where a natural, unregulated, and competitive market system will allow everyone to thrive, but instead only a few privileged people reap the benefits of it, and everyone else pays for it.
And we're ready for the second speaker from the row.
Hi, I'm Will, the second speaker. The first thing I want to hit on is agricultural price support, which the previous speaker talked about. What she neglected to mention was that there are actually some benefits for having agricultural price support. There are two good reasons to have them. The first one is that other countries, if we stop agricultural price support, our food production would move to other countries. What if the food production moved to countries like China, Venezuela, Iran, countries that could have hostile interests with regard to the U.S.? They might say, if we say, okay, Iran, no nuclear power, no nukes for you, they could cut off our food supply. Those price supports keep the food here, so we're more protected from countries that might want to, interfere with our food supply. The second reason is asymmetrical information. By keeping food production in our country, we control more of the regulations and quality standards with regard to food. I'm sure a lot of people here have seen dairy regulations. They have things like grade A eggs, grade A milk. That helps consumers. If we got milk or eggs or something like that from China, which has been known for doing things like selling us children's toys with lead paint, we might not be able to control, the regulations to make our food of a high quality. The second thing I want to hit on is minimum wage. Minimum wage in general is economically inefficient, but it's one tool in the government arsenal that should be applied only selectively. A minimum wage in a specific industry can actually encourage innovation in industries and automation. For example, if you have a minimum wage in just one industry rather than at the national level, you make the cost of labor higher, which encourages those companies to, research new technologies and automize their production, which is, in general, produces a net benefit to society. Let me talk about rent control. Rent control is also something that's economically inefficient generally, but can be effectively used in the short term to help consumers in the short term because it will, the market doesn't have time to adjust in the short term, and the price will be temporarily lowered for the consumer in the short term. Let me stress that. Something our first speaker hit on, private industry cannot provide health care effectively for people with pre-existing conditions, the elderly, and the poor. That's because private industries are only concerned with a profit margin and not for the social well-being of society. They want to charge people with pre-existing conditions, the elderly, and the poor, people with a higher risk to get sick, more money, which is bad. They can't afford it. So the government should step in to deal with national health care. It will be cheaper as a whole for society if the government takes control of the healthcare system as a whole, because everyone will be paying into economies of scale. The net cost will be lower overall.
Thank you very much. The second speaker from me, Con Doggy.
Hi, market smart or building organized economic activity. Therefore, the U.S. government should be smaller and less involved with the market. Let's break down the facts. Pricing is such a control and HCF price and first of all, such a minimum wage and food price. Then the food part caused by the government policy. They are all bad ways that government will first in the market for state. When the government gets involved in the free market, they end up hurting the very people. They will be willing to help and make everybody work off than they were in the beginning. Because the free market left by itself is well organized and efficient. If you think about it, it isn't a hard choice to that cutting back on government is a right choice to make.
All right, we are ready for the questioning phase. Let's start with the question from the Con Dog.
All right, let's see. So you guys are talking about how subsidies can be a good thing. So how do you feel about, is it right that government subsidized products that have negative health risks? Well, for example, corn. Corn, 97% of the United States corn is GMO corn, which is genetically modified organism. And they have found many health risks that are involved with this. And on top of that, because of the surplus of corn, over 90% of all food in grocery stores contain some type of corn byproduct.
Can you explain the negative health effects of GMO?
Scientists, when they've done tests on rats and other animals, found that multiple organ failures, as well as corn is actually fed to most of the livestock in the United States, and they find with cows that cows actually will only live about 6 months when they get diagnosed with corn.
That also treats cancer.
Well, I don't really think that genetically modified corn is all that bad. I don't think that the studies that have come out are very conclusive.
Well, it's like it's a science.
I think that.
What's the economic argument?
Well, as I mentioned in my presentation, there are good reasons for agricultural price support. Namely, that they let us have control over the food that's grown in our country, so we control the quality and the quality standards, and not other countries like China, which have notoriously poor reputations in that regard. And also, it's a national security interest. We keep the food production here, and other countries can't threaten to cut off our food supply. We're not relying on the international market. We can keep it in our country, so it's more secure. We have a secure source of food.
do you feel that it's right, because of farming subsidies, the United States exports a lot of produce to other countries, and the reason that this is because the price that we're selling it to them is so low. Now, that difference in price is actually picked up by the taxpayers. Do you feel that it's right that the taxpayers of the United States are paying for produce to other countries?
I think it's a necessary evil if we want to keep food production in our country because of the benefits I mentioned.
It's not, but we're not talking about our country, we're talking about exporting these products to other countries.
We're absolutely talking about our country because we want to keep food production here, so we're independent from the international market, and our food supply is stable. And how it's sold and following regulations on our food.
How is exporting products to other countries have to do with keeping products in our country?
Well, the same farmers who are exporting some of their goods to one country that sell it in the here, it's not all going to countries.
I know, I understand that, but what I'm saying is that we're subsidizing these food products, and people get lower prices for goods and customers, but why should we be paying for the rest of the world cheaper food products? Why is it taxes?
I see what you're saying, but I told you why. It's so we keep the food production in our country for those benefits that I mentioned. I mean, it's a necessary evil that we have to do this price subsidy. And you're right, the benefits are going to farmers.
Moderator's going to interrupt here just to say these questions. So are you saying that if without these subsidies that we would buy all our food from other countries?
I'm saying that if we didn't have these subsidies, some of the farming and agriculture would go overseas.
Right.
And we're not able to control it.
So we don't have subsidies for fruits and vegetables.
That's
We still produce lots of fruits and vegetables. So would we really starve if other countries didn't?
Maybe not starve, but
Fruits and vegetables make us healthier.
we wouldn't have control over the regulations, would we? We wouldn't be able to see if
Right.
what
That's another
if China
question.
throws them, put some weird ass your pesticide. That would be a real health risk.
Yes, consumers.
It's a case of asymmetrical information.
If consumers knew that everything coming into China is not regulated as thoroughly as things do here, then would we...
Right. I see what you're trying to say, but in the interim, people here would be affected. They'd get sick. They'd die.
And if they were told that we can't regulate the imports coming into China, we just use that number. But then you know, we decide, well, do they want to take the risk or not?
But not everybody knows. Like, what if you're poor? You don't listen to the news. You just go and you buy the cheapest thing.
You said that.
Yeah, let's go with a question from Steve Procat.
Anyone can answer this question. Also, with healthcare, what plans does your side have for providing affordable healthcare to the poor and people with pre-existing conditions?
All right, for healthcare, people are poor, about 10% of the nation. People with pre-existing conditions, that's about 1% of the nation. Now, when you're talking about taking universal healthcare affecting the whole nation, it's causing a huge problem for 90% of the population to wait in line just to get some medical attention. Yeah. Well, I did a healthcare project that I'm doing a healthcare policy on the road. For Britain, for example, they had about 5 deaths for every 1,000 persons, 10,000. And then, well, 10. And then now it's only 5 after the universal healthcare effect. And then their healthcare employees doubled, tripled. But most of those employees were just like medical developers or researchers that use food and medicine. You're talking about people with pre-existing condition that need help. They probably have to wait like 4 months, 5, 6 months compared to 1 month in America where that people in Canada trying to fix their legs have to come to America because they're waiting for to fix their legs. So it's probably be bad for having a heart attack and be like, yeah, 25 months,
Well, we're not
get an
saying-
apple, get healthy.
We're not saying we should do it like Canada, where there's other ways to do it.
Yeah, there's other ways, like making laws that says, hey, you can't discriminate against these existing.
So then we do
That's
that.
minimum government intervention, not all government.
But we do need government intervention.
Some to the minimum level. But you're talking about taking care of the whole welfare of everybody. That's better for insurance companies to take care of it. Because then the people that really need medical attention are there to see.
So if the government is working the whole thing, then they should at least allocate more intervention.
To the minimum level.
Do you, also, with that question, do you feel as though if people had healthcare, do you think that there would be more healthier people out there because people won't be scared to go to the doctor's office because it'll be $125 deductible, or they'll have to pay a monthly expense because Blue Cross Blue Shield. If we had universal health care, more people will feel okay to go to the hospital to the point where it wouldn't get to that point where they will have cancer after like 5 years of not seeing a doctor.
When I'm reading.
But to what extent? There's cost to everything. Having that much universal health care, that money doesn't come out of nowhere. So that will be taxed. And the taxes must be raised by a substantial amount. If you look at Europe and Canada that has universal health care, the taxes are much higher than they are in the United States.
Well, let me talk about that. They also have a lot more social programs, which account for some of that rise. But if you think about it, we're already paying a huge amount of health care now. I think healthcare and healthcare services are about 20% of the GDP. We already pay huge amounts of healthcare now to private companies. And, nationalizing it would not significantly increase costs, would actually decrease costs for the country as a whole because of economies of scale. That's where everybody pitches in money and everybody's using the system, so the cost goes down as a whole.
What about when you look at our country's debt, national debt problem that they're in? If doing a universal health care program at the time, wouldn't that send them, kind of a macro idea, but I mean, where would they get this money? I mean, they just, they would have to give up many other things that are quite important, like maybe prescription food.
Well, it would be a long-term, like,
As I said, it would save money, so it would actually reduce the economy of scale, since everybody's paying in.
Which is a concept we haven't studied yet.
Japan is a lot of money.
Well, Japan is not the United States. But
Well, I think that was universal health care.
Let me cut this off, but this is very good. The healthcare issue is very complicated. And the whole coverage of healthcare is not clear. There's equity issues, efficiency issues. There's no consensus among Congress on this. It's very complicated. Good discussion. Okay, let's go with another question relatively quick from the Congress to the showcase.
Talk about minimum wage. Minimum wage and individual sectors. We didn't split what those sectors were. And if it was the case that raising the minimum wage for innovate companies, that doesn't even make sense to the true economic terms of supply and demand when businesses are losing money paying for workers.
The question is,
How will minimum wage be an effective way to raise revenue,
How many companies?
to motivate people to get competitive work?
let me get this first, because I talked about it in my presentation. I didn't say that it would increase revenue for all this that you were saying. I said that it can be an effective tool in individual industries because while minimum wage raises the cost of businesses because they have to pay their workers more, it encourages them, and they would have to pay more for workers to automatize, and innovate and research to get, new technologies and machines to replace the workers. And that creates a net benefit to society because you have those new technologies coming into play. It encourages innovation and research. That's what I said.
For example, Safeway don't create their own cashier machine. So if you raise the minimum wage, you're not going to go out there and research to make your own innovative cashier machine.
Well,
it's going to come from a different company that innovates. If you raise the minimum wage for that, where's going to find the money to innovate first?
How do we know exactly what you do with the whether it's like is or wages though?
Exactly, that's government.
Is it really
So,
below?
how do you know?
Are they setting the minimum wage really that much higher than people live there? Like, because it's a place where somebody like McDonald's, they totally have enough money to raise their wages for the same thing they get as a lot of making sure the companies matter.
But let me respond to what you said. You talk about Safeway. They have, and Giant too, all the grocery store chains now are moving, as you've seen, towards automated checkout systems. That is innovation. That's technology at its finest.
That's not made by.
It's not made by Safeway, but it encourages them to get that technology to save money, and other companies are innovating and researching to produce this technology.
Okay, quick question from the Pro Cap to the Council.
What kind of system is this between the food market that will save for retirement and buy or research alternatives?
Oh, I got it. I mean, there's plenty of things. And technically, 401k is a different, there's different types of 401ks, different programs in the bank, but it's very much more beneficial to Social Security. As it is right now, people do not, the way Social Security is going right now, within the next 20 years, people will not be able to get benefits that they're receiving right now. So investing and saving through ultimate non-government retirement is actually the best thing that's possible to do. Investing, trusting the government to provide for your retirement is one of the worst ideas that there is right now.
You're talking about 401ks and retirement accounts like that.
Well, it's different companies that they offer things similar to 401k, but
Right, they offer those are voluntary, right?
yeah, they are voluntary.
So what if somebody has a job, they work their whole life, and they don't save anything for retirement? And there are people that do this. In fact, very significant amount of people that don't save any money at all for retirement, even when offers 401ks and things like that. How would you deal with that problem? Because those people are going to get too old to work, and they're going to have nothing. But with our Social Security system, they had to at least put some money away, so they're not just squandering on the street. So they get that Social Security payment.
Social Security is also based on how much money you actually put into that, how much you've actually worked throughout the years.
Right.
That's what you're actually judging on, how much you're going to use.
Right, but they do get some money.
They do, but also,
What if you don't
are you
save any
saying that, the people who actually did work hard and did save, they should be paying for the retirement fund?
No, they get benefits themselves.
Well, what you were saying is that, you guys are talking about Social Security and that's a positive thing, but the way the government is running right now, Social Security will not be here in 20 years because the government has messed up.
Well, that's an opinion.
It's not a good time, that's bad.
Social Security will not disappear or will have to, they don't adjust it. They won't be able to put full thing.
As I said, there may have to be some reform, but it's still a good program. Our question is, how would the private sector deal with those people who don't take any money for retirement? Would you, force them? There's no way.
Force them to what?
Stay for the retirement.
Well, people,
The government,
no doubt, people have to, so, in terms of force, why, what's the
I'm saying.
Let me modify your example, it's a good question. Suppose that some people decide to put all their money in the stock market, and the stock market bombs, and so then they retire and have no money. So, you just say, well, you made the wrong decision, too bad. for what? What can you do about this? If there's not this state. Not a quick answer here. You don't have to answer.
How would you make people stay, or how would you keep people
Well,
stay?
there's no doubt, I mean, when it really comes down to those things, I mean, there is social security. So we're not saying that, we never even said that we get rid of social security, but, I mean, there already is social security. And on top of that, there already is, things for people who, I mean, are under the poverty line as well as.
Right, so you're conceding that government intervention is necessary.
It's
beneficial in this regard.
Yeah.
Okay. I got one, I have time for electronics.
Oh, he told me to record the.
Okay, record this for me.
Yeah.
I have time for one question from the audience. Yes.
No one has a question to ask.
Over here.
We have one. For which
This is for the dog. How can you clear Social Security when it did help save the economy during things like the Great Recession, during the New Deal program?
The Social Security program was designed for the Depression time era. And then you can't use the same policy when the economy is healthy. If something's not broken, you don't fix it. This drops, right? There's a cap on it. But unlike the government doesn't have a cap to feel the damages that it does old policy.
What is about this policy? What that
Then you apply the same policy again. But you should take out the policy once the economy is healthy.
Okay, let's have a couple questions from your monitor. The CAT said that, argued that Postal Service is important to the government, but the Postal Service private businesses who just want to maximize profit, whereas the government that's not owned the government, make sure the Postal is, that is. What do you think about that argument?
Well, if you look at, UPS, if you look at United States Postal Service, they've been like, making, like bankruptcy for years. That's not possible. But if you look at FedEx and UPS, they're one of the Fortune 500 companies in the country. That shows you that having a private, making mail private good, that it can be more profitable and also a better way of managing it.
Why is it better? Why is it better? They said it wouldn't be better.
Can I talk about that?
Well, that's it.
What we think,
Why you said better, why would you think it'd be better, private versus public?
They have more, the private company would have more incentive to make it better because of competition.
Okay.
The USPS, United States Postal Service, that's government run, in case some of you don't know. But since it's government run, it can give the same flat rate to places in rural areas and out-of-the-way areas, and it lets those people get affordable mail service, where the private industry would probably want to go and charge those people more, and those people might not be able to get it.
That's an interesting argument. Should people, and this applies not to most of it, healthcare for utility access, should people who live in the boonies, should the government subsidize them because it's harder for them to get access to mail and cable TV and grocery stores and everything else?
Well, I think it's in the national interest for people sometimes to be out of their locations, because there are very good natural resources that can sometimes be found. For example, in Alaska, there's lots of oil and natural gas. And to develop it,
they would have an incentive because it's very popular for them to keep Alaskan mine. It's paid very well, and that compensates them there. The government can further compensate them because there's a way to
vote to allow for necessity.
Well, why is it necessity? Why don't we move to the city?
Because there are the resources there.
Well, but then they're getting paid handsomely to,
But more people might live in that area as well. I mean, not everybody's going to be paid handsomely.
well, would they just do?
I mean,
Okay.
not everybody is going to be at the top of society. There's going to be people that take out the trash.
One more question, and this is mostly for the captain, well, it's fine. Make a statement that McDonald's takes advantage of its workers. Trying to understand, how can they do that? Why would the workers just still work for Burger King, Wendy's, McDonald's, Pizza?
Well, I didn't say that that was meant to do that, it's like, possible to do that.
Well, how could it be possible if they do it, workers do it well?
Well, say Burger King. Burger King can
But wouldn't they have an incentive to treat their employees reasonably well, because they don't want to lose their workers to the company?
all those large companies in our country, if they're all,
But if I was a company and I saw all the other companies taking advantage of the workers, well, I might treat them, I might say, come to my business, because I'll treat you well, and then they don't want to work for me. Now, as long as there's competition among businesses, okay, as long as there's multiple businesses competing for hiring workers, then the businesses would have incentives to treat the workers reasonably well. But that's not always the case. If you're one business in a small town, you have a certain monopoly power. In that case,
are all the businesses hiring a lot of workers right now? It's harder to find a job.
right. So what would be your solution? Require all of the companies to treat their workers well in a particular way, but then they would hire even less workers
How do you know that they're hiring?
because it's more costly to give them that. So,
But things, but like companies like,
What?
but it's always a margin. If you make them pay more cost, then they're not going to open as many stores, they're not going to hire as many workers. Keep it around.
Still, if we're talking about minimum wage, that would encourage them to just, and that would create research technologies with.
Well, that's a theory that you put out, that they would develop, they would invest in more technologies to replace work.
With the technologies themselves to create jobs. And provide
Possible.
benefits.
That, it depends on what you're talking about. Technology is so French fries.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
20 years has come a long way.
Very good.